Welcome to Wyrd Stories, a podcast of the paranormal, supernatural, where we will be covering strange occurrences, ghosts, UFOs, crypto creatures. Look out! Look in.
Today's guest is Melissa Ann Rowe. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm really pleased to have you here, and you have a really great story to tell. It's a ghost story, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. If you could please let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Melissa Rowe. I was born completely blind with a condition called optic nerve hypoplasia, basically dead optic nerves. So it's total blindness in both eyes. I had as typical of a childhood as you could have being blind. It's different in many ways. But, I had the siblings, I had the chores, I currently live in Palm Desert, California with a wonderful husband. He's also blind. We just celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary, and I'm going to college for my AA in English. And I also enjoy baking, podcasting, listening to music, a lot of new age, a lot of Christian music, and I like to read.
Cool. Congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what is the story that you have to tell?
Well, it's weird how this all began because it started with a simple trip to the mailbox. Now, before my husband and I were living in the apartment that we're living now in Palm Desert, we were living in Blythe. It's a city right on the California border. You drive through it when you're going from Los Angeles going to Phoenix, Arizona. So you drive through Blythe, and it's this tiny town. Blink and you'll miss it. There was an apartment complex there for senior citizens and disabled people, and it's a low-income apartment complex. One day I was going to the mailbox, and I pulled out my mail, and there was a neighbor there named Sylvia, who I called Snoopy Sill, and she really was Snoopy. She would look over my shoulder, and she would see what kind of mail I got, and I could always feel her hovering over me. And she said, "Oh, you got a postcard from Becky." Now, I have an Aunt Becky, so I thought, oh, well, that was sweet of my aunt. So I locked up my mailbox, went home, opened up the postcard, and it wasn't the Braille postcards that my Aunt Becky normally sends me. It was just a regular, ordinary postcard. And so I thought, well, I'll call my Aunt Becky and see what's going on and see if perhaps I can find out why she sent me, because she normally will send cards that play music or whatever, but this was just an ordinary little print postcard. And she knew that I couldn't read it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll save this card. I'll, call her later and see what's going on. So I forgot all about this card. And then a few days later, we started having odd things happen around the house. Pots and pans would be moved around, and we kind of, first kind of chucked it up to, oh, the gremlins are at it. I think they know we're blind. They're misplacing stuff. But one night, my husband and I were watching TV, and we were lying in our bed. It's a one-bedroom apartment, and all of a sudden we heard noises coming from the kitchen, and there was nobody else but us. And at first we thought, well, these walls are paper thin. There must be some culinary night owl at work. They've got to be in their kitchen, working with their pots and pans. And then I realized, no, that is coming from our kitchen. I woke up the next morning. Sure enough, my pots and pans were in different cabinets. They were not where they normally were. There was one pan that I couldn't find that would go missing, and I finally found it. It was on the sofa, the most odd place. So, there was no malice or something to send you running out of a building, but it was very weird. And then Jeremy says, what if we have a ghost in our apartment? And I'm like, no, we can't have a ghost. And I kind of denied it and thought, that only happens on TV, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so this kept happening where a couple of times our pots and pans would move. And I'm kind of like your nice little Betty Crocker. I mean, I was a newlywed. I was like, oh, I want to cook this, and this, And so I was obsessed with having my pots and pans. And when you're blind, you kind of have to have things where you put them because you kind of like to be organized. And when you can't find your pots and pans, when there's a pan in the sink, when you swore you put it in the cabinet, or when there's a pan on the counter by the stove and it's now on top of the refrigerator, or it's, somewhere else, it's like, you kind of fly into this rage, like, where are my pans?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't taking it very well. Um, then it's moved from the kitchen to the bedroom. My husband and I would be laying there just relaxing, and suddenly we would hear the sliding of hangers. Like when you go to a department store and you slide the hangers on the rack as you're browsing through the shirts and whatever else you want to buy. So you hear the sliding sound. So it was like somebody was browsing through my closet. And that's another area of organization because I can't see color, so I put my dresses on one side. Certain color dresses go in certain areas, and certain outfits that match the shirt goes next to its counterpart, whether it be pants or shorts. And so I have everything all set up. When I woke up the next morning, all my dresses, no matter what color they were on one side next to all my sweatpants and things like that. And everything was mixed, I guess, like-minded clothing. Like dresses would be on one side, but it was like I had things in different colors in certain areas because I knew this went, a shirt went with, these shorts, or if I needed to wear a specific dress, I had for low cut dresses, I had shirts that I could wear. So I was like, how did this happen? And I knew my husband wasn't responsible for it because he was laying right there next to me. So I was like, what is going on? And I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, seriously, I don't know what is going on in this apartment. And she was a friend that liked to do tarot card reading. I wasn't really into that, but she had actually suggested that I go talk to another friend of hers who's blind and who is a medium. And I said, I don't know about that, but I was kind of genuinely curious. I lost my dad when he was 38 years old. He collapsed from a ruptured heart aneurysm. So I'd wanted to know like how my father was doing. So I thought, well, um, I'll give it a try, but I want to talk about my dad. I don't want to talk about the ghost in this apartment. I really don't think there's a ghost in here. And I just kept on dismissing it. But again, the gremlins were hard at work, and they were, whatever it was like moving stuff on us. And then there would be times when I would be in quiet meditation and I would feel a draft of air. It wasn't like cold chilled you to the bones, but you'd feel a presence in the room. And I wouldn't know who or what it was because I never saw any apparitions or weird figures or heard like disembodied voices or anything like that. I never heard anything. I just knew that there was something there. And I didn't know what it was. My husband was more into his like, oh, we have a ghost in this apartment. Okay, well, that's cool. But he was like into his Star Wars and, you know, and it really bothered him that things were being moved around. I'm a typical, I wouldn't say I'm the nagging wife, but I kind of like to have things in a certain way. So I'm like, why are you caring about this? What are you supposed to do? Da, 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 da. And my husband's like, don't worry about it. And so then I meet up with this gal and I'm talking to her on Skype. And she says, she talks about my dad. And, she said some things that were valid and that were very interesting. And she says, do you know a lady named Wilma? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, well, I want to tell you that Wilma is nearby. And I said, what do you mean nearby? She goes, Wilma's in your house. And I said, Wilma? And then I thought back. And then I remembered Snoopy Sill, as I called her. Well, I didn't call her that to her face, but Sylvia told me that there was a woman who lived in my apartment named Wilma. And last I knew, Wilma was sent to an assisted living facility. Now, this being an apartment complex for disabled and senior citizens, you can imagine there's a lot of emotional energy. There was a lot of people dying in their apartments, elderly people dying alone and, low income, not really having families there to help them. So, some of my friend says, there's a Wilma in your apartment. And she's just a cute little old lady. And she's just saying hello. And, that she's here and she's not going to harm you. And so, of course, I'm like, no, there can't be a Wilma. There just cannot be a Wilma. Just
Yeah.
totally dismissing it. So then a month later, I started volunteering. And mind you, these occurrences weren't happening every night, probably about 2 times a week. Either my stuff in my closet would move or my kitchen. The bathroom, she didn't really tinker with too much. But a month later, I started volunteering at the seniors' kitchen. And I would, like serve soup and serve the bread and help clean the tables. And especially ladies, elderly ladies, the water cooler discussions, they started gossiping. And I overheard them, and one of the ladies, her name was Becky. And she said, I really miss Wilma. I really miss her. It was a shame that I couldn't make it to her funeral service 3 months ago. I really miss talking to her. And it's weird. I sent her a postcard 4 months ago, and I don't understand, why I couldn't make it to her service. Things were kind of hard. And so then she starts talking about Wilma being such a good friend and how she loved Wilma. And so I walked over and I said, "Excuse me." I said, are you talking about Wilma? And you said your name was Becky. You said you sent Wilma a postcard? And she said, "Yeah, I sent her a postcard 4 months ago. And that's when this whole thing started, was 4 months ago." And she said, "I never got a response and I never knew why until a month later I found out that she had died and she had her funeral, and I was mad because I couldn't go to her service." And I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she goes, she lived in this assisted living facility, but before she did, I used to go and hang out at her apartment complex. She lived in, and then she stopped mid sentence and she turned to me and she said, "Where did you say you lived again?" And I said my apartment number, and she nearly fell out of her chair. She's like, "That's Wilma's apartment." And I stood there, and all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. I have Wilma's postcard. That was the Becky that sent me the postcard. Oh my God.
Mm.
And so I just had to go to the bathroom, and I had to sit down and collect myself for a minute. And it just, all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, what do I do? Do I give the postcard to Becky and just say, "Sorry, it didn't make it to Wilma"? Or do I give it to the landlord so she can forward it to Wilma's family? I, still hadn't understood. I'd forgotten completely about the postcard. I was going to ask my aunt, "Why'd you send me this postcard?" And I had completely just stopped thinking about it. So that night I went home and I thought, well, what should I do? What do I do with this postcard? That night, I also happened to be babysitting 2 children. And I told my husband silently about this, and I thought, I think this medium is onto something, because this Wilma lady, I never knew she died. And all of a sudden, I find out that she died 3 months ago. A month prior to Becky finding out about her death, she sends her a postcard. So something's up. That night, we have 2 children coming over with the ghost like heavily on our minds. And there was no malice. She was just like this cute, cute elderly lady that loved to play pranks and do her jokes. But that night, the children went to bed in the living room on an air mattress. In the middle of the night, one of the girls came into my room, and she came to my side of the bed and she was crying. And she said, "I felt somebody lightly tousle my hair and pinch my chubby cheeks because she did. She had chubby cheeks. I looked up. You and Jeremy weren't there. And then my husband, he blurts out, and I wanted to kill him. He said, I think it's the ghost in our apartment.
Mm.
He blurts out to this little girl, and all of a sudden, she would never go to the bathroom by herself. I mean, she wouldn't be in any area of the apartment by herself. Her and her sister were frantic. But I really think that Wilma was doing, you know what, how the elderly ladies, they look at children and they go, oh my God, you're so precious. Let me pinch those chubby cheeks. Oh, you're so cute. And it was like a friendly gesture, as if to say she was caring for them, but it scared the kids. But ever since then, they never set foot in this house. The next morning, after the kids went home, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to give this postcard to Wilma's family. I think Wilma wants her postcard. So I took the postcard to the landlord and I said, I've had this postcard for months and I never knew who it was from. Well, I found out it was from Becky and I knew it was for Wilma. It wasn't for me. And she goes, well, I will forward this to her family and make sure that she gets it. I said, well, I don't know. She might get it in cyberspace or something. She doesn't live anymore. The landlord had no idea that she died. They thought that she was still in the facility. And so I turned over the postcard, and after that, the haunting stopped. So I was talking to my friend, and she said, I think Wilma was looking for her postcard. And I said, that's just weird. It was frightening. Like, we never felt any harm. It was only love, but it was just a cute prankster of an old lady, little old lady Wilma. Just trying to watch over our home, go through our things. Maybe she thought all the dresses needed to be a certain way, and I don't organize my clothes the way Wilma does. I mean, maybe she had her little idiosyncrasies, and it was like she was like totally disagreeing with how I organized my house. But it was no malice or hate. It was just pure love. But I have to say, it was the scariest thing ever. Just to know that somebody was in your house moving your objects and you and your husband were the only ones living there, and you can reach over and your husband's lying there beside you, and to know that this is real, this is happening. Oh, it still gives me goosebumps to this day.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget it. It was
Yeah.
one of the most amazing experiences ever.
That is a really amazing experience, and it's really, really good to hear, actually, that it came to a close naturally. So that part's really cool, because a lot of the stories that I hear, the haunting or the ghost or whatever, they will stay there, even throughout for years and years and years. So for this to kind of naturally come to a close, Wilma's looking for her postcard and she got her postcard finally. That's just really amazing.
And I did speak to Becky when I went back to the seniors kitchen, and I said, and I kind of pulled her aside and I privately told her, I said, look, I made sure Wilma got the postcard. I didn't think it was right to say return to sender and here's your postcard back that you sent to Wilma that I've had all this time and didn't know is for Wilma. I was like, you know what? Her family needs it. And maybe it helps them with their grief. And, when that happened, it was just like it naturally fell out of place. We still felt the presence there, but I think it was just more of just coming here to say hi. And also before she basically lost her independence and went into a nursing facility, that was her last home she really knew. So there was some attachment to it. So I just have a feeling that, it wasn't like the presence was there, but it wasn't all the time. And it was just very like a passing glance, just a quick little hello. And then it wasn't there. Maybe she was just wanted to come back and see the home that she loved. And I don't know, but yeah, the hauntings completely stopped. Like the moving things around, it all stopped after I turned in her postcard. And it was an eye opener, and I'm kind of a detective, so it was like I solved the mystery. It's like
Yeah.
it made me like super happy, because you hear about these ghost hunters. It's like, is this place haunted? We can't say yes, we can't say no.
Right.
And I'm just like sitting there going, my house was haunted. I know who it is. I know why they did it. And guess what? I fixed it. So it
Wow.
was awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is awesome. And did you ever tell Sylvia the story? The Snoopy Soul?
No, that woman kind of creeped me out because she was a night owl, and like if my husband and I like wanted to stay up and watch TV, they had these paper thin walls so we could hear her phone conversation. So it would be like a commercial would play, and it would be weird because her conversation would kind of intermingle with the commercials, like, try this cool product. Oh, I have already. I'll be there at 5 o'clock. And I'm like, that's just random, and it's just like, it just sometimes her little one-liners, one-sided phone conversations would just, and then she blared her TV too.
Oh.
And so it was like, ugh. And then she was a night owl. She stayed up till like 2 in the morning, and and then every time my husband would come out of the house, of course she was elderly herself and alone. Well, she had her grandson with her, but he went to school. So it was like, she was by herself, and my husband would come out of the house, and she would kind of come on to him. It was weird because like he had this cologne on and I had perfume, and I came out. We were both standing there waiting for our ride to go to dinner. And she came out and she goes, "You smell good." And I've always been used to people saying that I smell good. So I said, "Thank you," naturally. And she goes, "No, not you, him." I was like,
Oh.
"Oh, okay."
Okay.
So, and she would never like shake my hand. She did shake my hand at one point, but she would never like hug me. But Jeremy, she would always put her arm around him. And
Huh.
I was like, okay, lady, you're kind of creepy, you know? So, and we
Yeah.
were the youngest people in the complex. Most of the people there were elderly and disabled. There was only one guy in his 40s that was blind, but everybody else was older than us. So we were like these young kids, and we felt like fish out of water. Seriously, it was weird. But
Yeah.
it was the apartment that we lived for 2 years. It was where we started our marriage. And I was certainly thankful to get out of that apartment, not because of the haunting, but because of just there being nothing out there in no man's land. And, to be able to move to another place, where thankfully we haven't had any experiences. But, at the first 2 years of our marriage, I mean, you'll never forget your first apartment on your own, your first, furniture. It's always hand me down, and just moving out and spreading your wings. And then with this experience added onto it. It was really
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How about any of your family, like Aunt Becky? Did you tell her about the story?
I did, and she said, "I never sent you a postcard," when I, did tell her.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "I honestly thought you did. I thought maybe you were just sending a postcard to say I'm thinking of you, and maybe you just forgot that I couldn't read print." Because sometimes, people have their senior moment. I've been sent print letters. Um, and then I love it when the telemarketers call and they say, "Would you like to subscribe to our newspaper?" I'll be like, "Sure, will you come read it to me? I'd love to sign up, read it to me." So I always give the marketers a hard time, like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, would you like to buy our vacuum?" "Oh yeah, come vacuum my house for me. I can't see. How does this work?"
Right, right,
So they're like, "Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day." Then they don't call me anymore. So,
right.
um, I think my favorite one is when Geico called to see if I wanted to get auto insurance.
Oh,
And I
nice.
said, "Absolutely. Do you accept blind automobile drivers?" "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Thank you for your time."
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but no, my Aunt Becky never sent me that postcard. And the whole time I was thinking, Becky, Becky, Becky. My Aunt Becky was on my mind. And it never occurred to me that there was a Becky and that there was a Wilma,
Wow.
you know? So it was weird.
Wow. Yeah, that is. And like I said, I just think it's way, way cool that, this whole thing happened, and especially the timing when you first got there, and then also for it to just resolve itself after a few months. I think that's just really, really cool.
Yeah, and how the story begins when you really connect all the dots. It begins with one of the most mundane activities, checking your mail.
Right.
And you
Right.
opened up a postcard that wasn't yours. And, I just finally realized, Wilma was saying, "Hey, you took my postcard. Where is it? I want it." You know?
Yeah, that's
So,
so cool.
mhm.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing and telling this story. I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy listening to it. And especially because it isn't all super spooky, scary, bloody, and, whatever. It's just,
Yeah, somebody else was like, if you have a paranormal story?" And I told him, and he's like, "That's not scary enough." And I was like, "It was to me." Come on now.
that would be scary to me, though. If
Yeah,
it started happening in my house, I can tell you right now, I would be trying to figure out how I can resolve it.
indeed.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome.